Imagine a city that never sleeps, where glass towers rise like mountains of light and power controls every breath people take. This city worships success, and at the very top of it lives a woman the world calls unstoppable. She built empires from nothing, turned companies into legends, and bent markets to her will. Magazines call her a symbol of strength, investors follow her shadow, and enemies fear her silence. But behind the walls of her perfect world there is a truth no one sees. Quiet room, a small bed, and a fragile child. Her daughter was born different from the first moment. Weak heart, shallow breath, tiny hands that struggled to hold on. Doctors spoke in careful voices and long pauses. They said the word survival like it was a question, not a promise. The woman listened without showing emotion. She nodded, asked smart questions, signed papers, and left. To her, the hospital was just another building, another problem to manage. As the years passed, her power grew. Meetings became bigger, deals became heavier, numbers became larger, and the child grew up surrounded by machines instead of toys, nurses instead of friends, silence instead of laughter. Every time the woman visited, she stayed only minutes. She asked the same things every time. What is the cost? What is the risk? What is the outcome? Love slowly turned into calculation. At night, the child whispered her mother's name into the dark, hoping the door would open, hoping arms would wrap around her. But the door stayed closed. Across the city, in a high-glass office, the woman stood alone, watching lights flicker below. She told herself emotions were dangerous, attachments were weaknesses, and weakness had no place in her world. She convinced herself she was protecting both of them, protecting her empire, protecting her image, protecting the future she believed only she could build. But fear lived quietly inside her. Fear of loss. Fear of being seen as fragile. Fear of a world where money could not fix everything. One evening the doctors stopped, avoiding the truth. They said the words clearly. The treatment would never end. The costs would only rise, and the chances would never be certain. They spoke about time. Short time. Uncertain time. That night the woman did not return home. She drove aimlessly through the city, past the towers she owned, past the streets that knew her name, past the life she built. Inside her a battle raged, between the mother she never learned to be, and the ruler she trained herself to become. By dawn her decision was made. Not with tears, not with prayers, but with cold clarity. She told herself the world was cruel, and only the strong survived. She told herself nature chooses, and she was simply stepping aside. She prepared quietly. No assistance. No security. No witnesses. The next evening she placed her sleeping daughter into the back seat of her car, wrapped in a blanket, small and warm, trusting. As the city lights faded behind them, the road ahead climbed into darkness, toward the mountains, toward silence, toward a choice that would change everything. And this was only the beginning. The road into the mountains stretched endlessly ahead. Darkness wrapped around the car as the city disappeared behind them. No lights, no signs, only the sound of tires cutting through cold air. Inside the car the heater hummed softly, trying to fight the freezing night. The woman kept her eyes on the road, her face calm, her thoughts loud. In the back seat the child stirred. Her fever made her restless. Small breaths fogged the window. She whispered her mother's name again and again, not knowing why. Fear was growing inside her. The woman tightened her grip on the steering wheel. Every mile felt heavier than the last. Memories she never allowed herself to feel began knocking. First steps, first smile. First time the child reached for her, she pushed them away. Told herself memories changed nothing. Told herself this was necessary. Snow began to fall. Soft at first, then heavier. Covering the road. Covering the world. The car slowed. The silence grew deeper. Finally she stopped. Nothing around them, only mountains, trees, and the sound of wind. She turned and looked at the child. For the first time in a long while, really looked. The child opened her eyes. Confused, scared, but still trusting. Mother, she whispered. The word cut deeper than any blade. The woman stepped out into the snow. Cold air burned her lungs. She opened the back door, lifted the child into her arms. The child was light. Too light, her body warm against the freezing night. The woman walked a few steps away from the car. Each step slower than the last. She knelt, placed the child gently on the ground, wrapped the blanket tighter around her. Stay here, she said. I will come back. The child reached out, tiny fingers grabbing her coat. Please do not leave. It is cold. Time stopped. For one breath, one single moment. The woman almost stayed. Then fear won. She pulled her coat free, stood up, and turned away. The child cried out, a sound full of fear and pain. The woman did not look back. She got into the car, closed the door, and drove away. The sound of the engine faded. The wind grew louder. The night swallowed everything. The child cried, then cried softer, then only shivered. Snow covered the ground, covered her hair, covered the world. Far away the woman drove on, her heart pounding, her mind silent. She told herself it was over. She told herself she was free, but deep inside something had already broken. Behind her in the mountains, a small life waited. Between cold and hope, the night slowly gave way to morning. The storm softened. Snow rested heavy on the ground. In the quiet of the mountains, a poor woman stepped out of her small wooden cabin. She carried an old basket, her hands rough from years of work, her breath visible in the cold air. She had lived in these mountains all her life. She knew every sound, every silence. Something felt wrong. She stopped, listened, and followed a feeling she could not explain. Behind a line of trees, near the frozen road, she saw something small and unmoving. Her heart raced. She ran closer, and fell to her knees. A child, skin pale, lips blue, body shaking. The woman did not hesitate. She wrapped the child in her shawl, held her close, and rushed back to the cabin. Inside she lit a fire, fed it with dry wood, filled the room with warmth. She rubbed the child's hands, whispered words of comfort, gave her warm water. Slowly, very slowly, the child breathed deeper. Life returned. Hours turned into days. The child stayed, because the woman would not let her go. She called neighbors, shared what little food she had, and watched over the child through sleepless nights. The child spoke little, but when she did, she asked only one thing: where is my mother? The woman never answered that question. She only held her tighter. Weeks passed, then months. The child grew stronger, her cough faded, her steps steadied. The mountains became her home. The cabin became her world. She learned to fetch water, to help with chores, to smile again. There was no money, no medicine worth fortunes, only care, only patience, only love. And it was enough. Far away in the city, the billionaire woman stood on balconies overlooking her empire, signing deals, making speeches, winning awards. People praised her strength. But every night, when the world grew quiet, she dreamed of snow and a small voice calling her name. She woke with her heart racing, her sheets cold. She never spoke of that night, never asked questions, never looked back. Years passed. The child in the mountains grew into a young girl. Strong, quietly determined. The pain of abandonment did not disappear. It settled deep inside her, becoming fuel. She studied whenever she could, learned from books, from people, from life. She promised herself one thing: she would never leave anyone behind. And somewhere between the mountains and the city, two lives moved in opposite directions, both shaped by the same night, both unaware that fate was slowly pulling them back toward each other. Years continued to move forward without asking permission. The girl became a woman shaped by hardship and patience. Life in the mountains taught her endurance. Every winter made her stronger. Every loss taught her control. She learned to listen more than she spoke, to observe before she acted. Education did not come easily. She studied by dim light, worked during the day, and carried responsibility early. People noticed her calm strength, her clarity, her ability to lead without raising her voice. Opportunities slowly appeared, small at first, then larger. She left the mountains with gratitude, not anger, carrying lessons instead of bitterness. Step by step, she built a life of her own. Far away, the billionaire woman aged, surrounded by luxury but never peace. She had everything, except rest. Success followed her, yet joy never stayed. The nightmares grew quieter but heavier. They came without warning. Snow, darkness, and a child reaching out. She buried herself deeper in work, believing achievement could silence memory. Then came the invitation, a global summit, leaders, innovators, voices shaping the future. The billionaire woman sat among the audience, Prepared to listen, not knowing what awaited her. The lights dimmed, applause filled the hall. A young woman walked onto the stage. Calm, confident, unafraid. The voice reached the back of the room. Something inside the billionaire woman stopped, the posture, the eyes, the presence. Recognition hit without logic. Her breath caught, her hands trembled. The speech continued. Words about resilience. About responsibility. About choosing compassion even when it costs everything. Every sentence felt personal. When the applause ended, the billionaire woman stood frozen, unable to move. After the event, in a quiet corridor, their paths crossed. Time slowed. The billionaire woman opened her mouth, but no words came. The young woman looked at her steady, unshaken, and spoke softly. You left me, but life chose to keep me. There was no anger, no demand, only truth. The billionaire woman felt the weight of decades collapse in one moment. For the first time, power meant nothing, and silence said everything. The silence between them stretched longer than any speech ever could. People passed by, voices echoed, but neither of them moved. The billionaire woman wanted to fall to her knees, to explain, to beg, to undo the night that followed her for decades. But she understood something then. Some moments cannot be repaired, only remembered. The young woman did not wait. She nodded once, a gesture of closure, and walked away. Each step she took felt lighter, because she had already survived the worst. The billionaire woman stood alone, surrounded by people, more isolated than ever. That night she returned to her empty home, the walls covered with art, the rooms filled with expensive silence. She sat in the dark, no assistance, no calls, no screens, only memory. She saw the snow again, felt the cold, heard the small voice. For the first time she did not run. She allowed the pain to stay. Days turned into weeks, weeks into years. The billionaire woman changed quietly. She stepped away from power, from headlines. From the need to be feared, she funded hospitals, schools, shelters. Not for attention, not for forgiveness, but because regret needed somewhere to go. Yet she never tried to find her daughter again. Some distances are not measured in miles but in choices. The daughter built a life defined by strength. She created spaces of, she protected those who were vulnerable because she knew what abandonment felt like. She loved deeply, without fear. Two lives continued, separate, complete in their own ways, one shaped by loss, one shaped by survival. And the world never knew their full story, but somewhere between the mountains and the city, a truth remained. That power without compassion is empty. That leaving is easy, but staying is courage. And that sometimes, the ones we try to forget, become the reason we are never whole again. Time moved forward quietly. No announcements, no headlines. The billionaire woman grew older, her hair silver, her steps slower. Her empire still vast but distant. People remembered her as a legend. A woman who ruled markets, who never showed weakness. No one knew that her greatest lesson came after she lost everything that truly mattered. She spent her mornings walking alone, thinking about a child she once held, thinking about a night she could never erase. She learned that money can build cities, but it cannot rebuild a moment, cannot return a hand once released. Far away, the daughter lived freely, her life filled with meaning, with people who chose her and stayed. She became a voice for the forgotten, a shelter for the abandoned, a strength for those left behind. She did not carry hate. She carried understanding, because survival had taught her something rare. That healing does not require revenge, only truth. Years later, when the billionaire woman felt her time growing short, she wrote one final letter, not to be sent, not to be read, just written. She wrote about fear, about pride, about a choice made in weakness. She admitted what she could never say aloud, that the strongest moment of her life would have been staying, and she failed. She placed the letter away, closed her eyes, and accepted silence. The daughter never read those words, never needed them, because she had already built something greater than apology, a life. And so the story ends without reunion, without forgiveness asked, without forgiveness given, only lessons. That true strength is presence, that love is action, and that the coldest places in the world are not the mountains, they are the hearts that choose to walk away.